Why does Africa, a continent so rich in resources and potential, often falter when it comes to selecting its presidents? This is a question that has puzzled many. The selection of a president is a paramount decision that shapes a nation's future. It's the choice of a leader who will navigate the country's economy, foreign relations, and domestic policies. Yet in Africa, a recurring theme of questionable presidential selections has emerged, a pattern that seems to contrast with the continent's vast potential. Is it a mere coincidence, or is there a deeper underlying issue at play? This video aims to delve into this enigma, to unravel the complexities of Africa's political landscape. We'll examine case studies, dissect historical events, and scrutinize political structures. Our objective? To shed light on this intriguing question and stimulate informed discussions. In this exploration, we dive into the heart of Africa's politics, unearthing the roots of its presidential selection conundrum. Stay tuned as we embark on this journey of discovery. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. We begin our journey in Zimbabwe, where Robert Mugabe held the reins of power for more than 3 decades. Indeed, Mugabe's rule is a tale of 2 halves. Initially, he was hailed as a liberator, a beacon of hope for a country emerging from the shackles of colonial rule. His early years in power saw significant strides in education and health, painting a picture of a prosperous future. However, as the years rolled on, the promise of this bright new dawn began to fade. Zimbabwe's economy spiraled into a state of freefall, marred by hyperinflation, unemployment, and widespread poverty. The land once known as the breadbasket of Africa was now a shadow of its former self. But how did Mugabe manage to hold on to power in the face of such adversity? The answer lies in the absence of effective checks and balances. With a firm grip on the levers of power, Mugabe was able to manipulate the political landscape to his advantage, quashing opposition and stifling dissent. This narrative, unfortunately, is not unique to Zimbabwe. It echoes across the African continent, where a number of leaders have clung to power for decades, often leading their countries into economic and social turmoil. Zimbabwe's tale is a stark reminder of the consequences of poor presidential selection, but it is far from being the only case. Next, we turn our gaze to Libya, where Muammar Gaddafi's rule was marked by a reign of terror and economic mismanagement. Let's delve deeper into the Gaddafi era. This was a period characterized by a stark disregard for human rights, which manifested in myriad ways. From suppressing free speech to the use of torture and public executions, Gaddafi's regime was a chilling example of autocracy in its most brutal form. Yet it wasn't just the human rights abuses that tarnished Gaddafi's rule. His economic policies wreaked havoc on the Libyan economy. Mismanagement and corruption were rife, and the wealth generated by Libya's vast oil reserves was squandered, leading to widespread poverty among the Libyan people. What's more, the lack of democratic processes allowed Gaddafi to stay in power for over 4 decades. Elections were a mere facade, with Gaddafi and his associates manipulating the political landscape to maintain their grip on power. This isn't just Libya's story, it echoes a broader pattern across Africa, where a lack of democratic processes and a disregard for human rights often go hand in hand with economic mismanagement. It's a vicious cycle that keeps the continent trapped in a state of political instability and economic hardship. Like Zimbabwe, Libya's experience underlines the dire consequences of poor presidential selection. And it's a cautionary tale for Africa, a stark reminder that the selection of leaders should never be taken lightly. In both Zimbabwe and Libya, we see the damaging impacts of poor presidential selection. These are but 2 examples in a vast continent where the challenge of selecting effective, ethical leaders is all too commonplace. The heart of this issue lies in the absence of robust checks and balances and the undermining of democratic processes. In Zimbabwe, we witnessed a leader who held power for over 3 decades, while Libya saw a regime that lasted for over 40 years. This trend is not isolated to these countries, it is a recurring issue across many African nations. This pattern of poor leadership selection creates a debilitating cycle. Inadequate leadership leads to socio-economic decline, which in turn breeds desperation and instability, making it even harder to enforce democratic norms and select competent leaders. It is clear that for Africa to realize its potential, it must break this cycle and make better choices in its presidential selections.